Welcome back to your dedicated deep dive. Today, we're taking a look at something that seems simple on the surface, but, well, it really opens door, doesn't it? We're talking about French vocabulary for l'école, school life, school supplies, that kind of thing. Our mission today isn't just, basic translation. We want to get into the nuances, the context, see what these everyday words tell us about, well, everyday life in France. So let's unpack this. We're working from a great resource that boils down some key terms for you, makes it quick to learn, but still pretty insightful.
Exactly. And what's fascinating, I think, is how foundational these words are. I mean, whether you're actually planning to maybe study in France or just brushing up your language skills, or even if you're just curious about how another culture handles something universal like school, this vocabulary is, well, it's key. And like you said, it's not just about rote memorization. It's about understanding the context, the lived experience behind the words.
Absolutely. You can't really get a feel for a place without knowing the people, right?
Yeah.
So let's start there. The people you'd find in a school setting. First up, we have l'élève. That's l'élève, the student. This one's interesting because it's gender neutral, which isn't always the case in French, as we'll see. Then for the teacher, you've got le professeur for a male teacher, and la professeure for a female teacher.
Mm-hmm.
The one in charge, the principal, that's le directeur, le directeur. Or if it's a woman, la directrice, la directrice.
Right.
And then, of course, your peers. Les camarades de classe. Les camarades de classe. Classmates. And this is exactly why knowing these specific roles matters. These are the core people you'd interact with or, hear about in any school environment. And what's really interesting there, as you pointed out, are the gendered nouns. Le professeur, la professeure. It immediately gives you this little window into French grammar, doesn't it? Where the noun itself changes based on gender. It's not just the article.
Yeah, it affects everything that follows, adjectives and so on.
Exactly. And it kind of reflects subtly how French culture sometimes emphasizes maybe more formal titles or clearer role distinctions within institutions.
That's a great point. It's structure baked right into the language. So let's see them in action. The simple example sentence. L'élève parle avec la professeure, which just means the student is speaking with the teacher. You see how the professeur lines up.
Simple and clear.
Okay, so we have the people. What about the stuff they use? The tools of the trade, so to speak. Let's imagine opening up a student's backpack. What's inside? First, probably un cahier, a notebook. Then un stylo, stylo, that's a pen, and a crayon, a pencil, need to fix a mistake. Une gomme, an eraser, and the thing holding it all, a sac à dos, a backpack.
And this is where it gets really practical, right? Like imagine you actually are in France, maybe in a stationery shop or a department store. You could just walk up and say, Je cherche un sac à dos pour l'école. I'm looking for a school backpack. It's about giving you those little phrases that unlock real-world interactions. Very useful.
Definitely empowering. Okay, supplies are packed. Where are we going in this French school? Let's talk about the places, the physical locations. You've got la salle de classe.
La salle de classe. The classroom. Pretty straightforward. For quiet study or borrowing books, there's la bibliothèque. La bibliothèque, the library. Lunchtime happens in la cantine, the cafeteria. For sports and exercise, le gymnase, the gym. And maybe the most fun place for younger kids, la cour de récréation. La cour de récréation, the playground or schoolyard. And speaking of the playground, here's a sentence you might hear. Les enfants jouent dans la cour de récréation. The children are playing on the playground.
Yeah, and what's interesting about these places, I think, is how they paint a picture of the school day's rhythm. And sometimes that rhythm is, well, a bit different from what you might expect. For instance, la cantine in France. It often means a proper sit-down meal, sometimes multiple courses, even for young kids. It kind of reflects that cultural importance placed on food and taking time for meals together.
Right, not just grabbing a quick bite. Exactly. And la cour de récréation, the playground or yard, it highlights maybe a more structured approach to breaks and social time compared to some other systems. So the words themselves give you these little cultural clues.
That's fascinating, how culture shapes the space itself. Okay, so from the buildings and grounds, let's get into the core business of school, the learning. Let's talk subjects and the routine. You have les mathématiques, or more casually, les maths. For math. Naturally, there's le français, French language class. Then l'histoire, history. Les sciences. A break from studies is la récréation, recess or break time. And then the maybe less fun parts, an examen, examen, an exam, and les devoirs, homework.
The essentials of academic life, really.
Exactly. And here's a sentence that probably feels familiar to anyone who's been a student. J'ai un examen de français demain. I have a French exam tomorrow. A bit of dread, perhaps.
Ah, yes, definitely relatable. But these terms, they really are the sort of the verbs of school life, aren't they? What you study, the activities, the assessments, knowing an examen or les devoirs is just crucial if you're talking about your studies or someone else's in French. It connects you to that universal student experience.
Well said. Okay, we've covered quite a bit: people, supplies, places, subjects. Let's do a really quick check-in, see how much is stuck. Just a quick recall. Thinking back to those school supplies, what was the word for notebook? Take a second. Got it. That's right. Cahier. Cahier.
Good one.
Okay, how about one of the places? The library, where you go for books.
Yep, you got it. La bibliothèque. Great job.
Fantastic. And honestly, even just recalling a couple of these shows, the value of focusing in like this, you're building that foundation word by word. It really does add up. Absolutely. So you've just taken a pretty deep dive into some really practical, useful French vocabulary around school life. The key now is practice, right? Keep saying these words. Maybe try labeling things. Put a little sticky note on your backpack saying, "Ants, ago." It sounds silly, but it genuinely helps make the words part of your environment.
It really does. And it leads to maybe a final thought to mull over. Beyond just learning the translations, what does digging into vocabulary like this for something as everyday as school actually teach us? What does it reveal about those subtle differences, but also the universal similarities in how different cultures organize daily life? It's more than just words. It's a perspective shift, learning to see shared human experiences through a slightly different linguistic and maybe cultural lens.
That's a perfect place to leave it. Something for you to think about. Merci beaucoup for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, à bientôt.